All right. Always good to be back in Berlin. Uh, just arrived, well, just almost now from Munich, and it's always funny. I'm struck with this terrible sense of panic because everyone's so cool in Berlin, you know. And in Munich, it's kind of like, as long as I have a brass button blue blazer, my white shirt, and my diesel jeans, you know, it's cool. Not here in Berlin. It's like, are my jeans tight enough? Do I have enough stripes on somewhere? Should I do my hair? Is it trying too hard? They're trying too hard. Should I try too hard? So I just didn't do my hair at all. That's cool, right? We're going au naturel today because it's really all about Riesling anyway. So before we start, I just wanted to thank Billy Wagner, even though he's, there he is. Billy Wagner, everybody. He's the guy who brought me here today. Thank you for reaching out, Billy. It's always such a pleasure, especially with such an awesome theme, which is one of my favorite themes, which is Riesling. And it's been, well, since I've come to Germany, obviously a huge part of my entire life. But even before I arrived, Riesling was already, believe it or not, the Americans also have a bit of an idea about Riesling. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. And I was always a very passionate fan. And once I came here and I was able to dig my hands in the soils and stare up at these incredibly steep vineyards, then I realized not just the beauty but the power of what Riesling is all about. And so when we spoke about a theme today, I thought, well, what better and what more appropriate time to bring up the idea that what we have right under our noses is one of the most majestic wines on the planet. And you know, it's a little bit frustrating for me, I guess. It's always the case, regardless of if you're in Berlin, you kind of maybe sometimes take for granted how boisterous and how vigorous and vibrant the city is, you know, next to a more conservative place like Munich. And on the other hand, maybe we take for granted maybe the safety, the security, and you know, the sort of quaintness of it all down there. But you know, when people come to me in the restaurant and say, "Oh, you don't have any cloudy bay," oh, schade. I think, why in the hell are you going to New Zealand when you've got such amazing wine in your backyard? This is crazy to me. And does it take a guy from America to fly to Germany to tell Germans this? This is really, really crazy. But maybe it does. And that was kind of the point, to sort of, I guess, describe some of, in my opinion, the greatest examples of this grape in the world from also an Ausländer point of view. So we're starting here today with something from a very, very good buddy of mine, actually, the Felix Adelmann. I would highly suggest if you're looking to, I don't know, do a little castle viewing, or if you're in the Württemberg area. I'm not sure why you would be randomly, but it's worth a detour. He's an absolutely insane guy. He looks, sounds, acts, and has the same personality as Hunter S. Thompson. He's a young guy. He's incredibly passionate and motivated. And he is now facing this sort of challenge of accepting a 100-year history of his winery. And what now, of course, this burden that it bears on him, what to do with so much tradition behind him, but with so much innovation yet ahead of him. And this is so just now the very exciting transition period between his father to him, officially taking over the winery just for a couple of years now. And I've spent a lot of time with him. He actually asked me to speak at his, be the keynote speaker, I guess, of his 100-year jubileums at the castle. So I did a lot of research and a lot of tastings. And I'm very interested in this particular style of Riesling that's very unlike anything else in Germany. And of course, I wanted to select different Rieslings from different regions to also display the sheer diversity of what this grape can do. Of course, now we're in Württemberg, so of course this is warmer. than most of the other regions in Germany. So the challenge is how to make an elegant Riesling in such a warm climate, with also a very different subsoil. So it's very volcanic, very deep, very rich. Can also be very steep, which his is. And this is his top wine called the Song of the Earth. So this Lied des Erdes. And I think it's, of course, not easy to taste as well today, all these 2013s. They're so young, of course, they're not showing their entire potential yet. But the point in this is to also taste that sort of canned heat, this sort of nervousness, this willingness to just burst out at some point and blossom into an incredible wine, which I think the 13s will. But you can already sense this sort of heat, this richness, this depth to the wine, this sort of slight oiliness to the wine that's also very, very, very different. In sharp contrast to what we're going to now, which is von Winning. So we're moving from Württemberg over to the Pfalz. I wanted to move in kind of a south to north direction to sort of say, okay, this is the warm region, these are the big bulky, and to sort of go through the different levels of finesse and elegance and refinement as we go up, of course, eventually ending up in the Mosel. Weingut von Winning. This is, for me, one of the most exciting, I say, new wineries in Germany, because really they only started officially producing wine in 2008. This is part of the general big Bs of the Pfalz, so von Bühl, Bassum and Jordan, and then, of course, the Dr. Deinert. And the idea was to sort of finally find a clarity to separate these various wineries into their own unique concepts. So now, von Bassum and Jordan has everything in stainless steel. Von Bühl makes wonderful wine, but on a relatively more accessible level, let's say. However, with the new cellar master from Bollinger, their focus is really heavily also on sparkling wine and maybe producing Germany's best sparkling wine with, let's face it, for me, probably one of the best champagne enologists around for a big mark. And then you have von Winning. Okay, so what do we do here? How do we separate this? Well, let's take it back to the roots. You know, everyone wants to think, oh my gosh, Holzfass, this is so modern, this is so modern. Really? Did we have stainless steel tanks 100 years ago? No, they were called bombs. They weren't tanks. We didn't have anything. We had wood. We had big wood tanks, and we had barriques. This isn't anything new. This is actually very traditional. And so the idea was to make this sort of old style of Riesling that was a little bit sort of not trying to avoid this richness of what the Pfalz soil gives, but to embrace it. And why not? If, I would be so bold as to say, the Pfalz, especially here in Deidesheim and Forst, these grouping of vineyards are as good from a quality standpoint as any Premier or even Grand Cru Burgundy. And I'm a Burgundy freak. Doesn't come easily off the tongue. But I would absolutely say that the complexity of the soil, this mix of limestone, marl, and this volcanic basalt, this brings such an incredible complexity and power to the wine. Not to mention an incredibly unique microclimate that if you get on the train in Munich and get off the train in Deidesheim, you're probably gaining about 3 degrees Celsius in temperature. So these little sun traps of perfect shielded from the wind and the elements' warmth and sun, where the Riesling can get so ripe and perfect, but not overripe and not underripe, but just right there. As you would consider on the slope of Pouligny, you have, of course, the village wines, you have the Premier Cru wines, and in the sweet spot of the slope, you have Bâtard Montrachet, and Chevalier Montrachet. This is exactly here, with vineyards like Kalkofen, Langemorgen, Ungerheuer, and so weiter. So this is, for me, embraces the power, the richness of what really this area of Germany can give. And so it makes sense, if we age every Burgundy in Barrique, then why the hell not Riesling? It has the acidity, it has the fruit, it has the structure, it has the power. So instead of trying to avoid it, let's embrace it. And let's let it sit in the bottle for 15 years and see what happens. This is another point I think is kind of a shame. There's also a generational shift, I think, from from the old train of thought to the new. The old train of thought was, no, drink it fresh, 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 fresh. Do you have 2015 yet? No. Why not? Okay. This is for me always frustrating because, as I said, we're tasting these beautiful wines, but you're tasting for potential. You're not tasting necessarily overt opulence and enjoyment. And if you plunge it in ice the whole night and drink it ice cold, then do me a favor and drink some rubbish €2 bottle of Cubia, because it tastes the same. If you're going to spend the money on a great wine, then treat it properly. This unfortunately comes with responsibility. You can save yourself money, you can save me the frustration, and everyone wins, right? But if you want to drink something great, unfortunately, we need patience, we need understanding. And so we need to treat these wines. There he is. little Munich in the house. So the point is if we're going to say, okay, let's make a Grand Cru wine in Germany. Okay, fine. Then let's not club a baby seal. Let's let it spread its wings. Okay, third wine should be coming around very soon. I should also say one thing, especially in light of what we're tasting now, fun vinning. In 2013, I was in the cellar on 2 different occasions, tasted everything out of the barrel, and this was for me a bit of a revelation, because, let's take it back to my personal history just for a moment, and not just mine. In 1971, there was one great thing that happened and one horrendous thing that happened. Great thing, Tantris opened its doors. In 1971, where I spend most of my life, not at home, but at Tantris, served for the first time what we know now as Haute German cuisine. It was the first time that anything with a béarnaise or any sort of French preparation was even perceived and served on a white tablecloth on a Michelin star level. The first white tablecloth, the first 3 Michelin star, the first everything. So this was really a momentous occasion for us. And this was, of course, the first time that a German winemaker had reason to believe that their wines belonged in a Michelin star restaurant. God forbid in 1971 would you find a German Riesling on a French wine list. Seriously. Yeah, okay. Of course not. They have Alsace. Why the hell do we need the Germans? Right. Well, of course, they're very different things, but try to convince a Frenchman of that. So all of a sudden, we have a 3-star Michelin setting. But all we have are sickly sweet, ridiculously flat, flabby, flaccid wines. Oversweet, horribly boring, and mass-produced. Okay, well, it took a little while before, of course, we kind of caught up to this idea. But to think about at the same time, Germany created the German wine laws, which was the horrendous thing that happened in this year, unfortunately, and at the same time. The German wine laws said, okay, we have to make this, which is, I think, unfortunately, very common in legislation, regardless of what country. Let's make this easier by making it way more complicated. They said, okay, we have 30,000 different declared vineyards in Germany. 30,000 little, tiny vineyards. Now, let's keep in mind, who planted the vineyards in Germany? The monks. Who? The Benedictines. Where'd they start? Burgundy. Okay. So, if we embrace this concept in Burgundy, we should probably also embrace it in Germany. After all, it's the same monks. They had the same ideas, they had the same motivations, they had the same tastes. They had the same brilliance, honestly. But we decided to dilute these 30,000 vineyards into these sort of larger groupings. And so this one guy who has rubbish, who happens to be a neighbor from this other guy who has something really special, gets lumped in together. And now the rubbish guy says, sweet, I'm buying a new car. And then the good guy says, oi. All of a sudden you have a completely confused public who says, okay, I thought that this vineyard was good, but I had this other bottle from the same vineyard and now it sucks. And how much of a good idea is it, by the way, to not base your quality on the vineyard itself, but to base it on the sugar content? It's originally a good idea to say, okay, guys, listen, you can't make horribly green, acidic nonsense. Theoretically, the best sites, Because how did the kings of old or the original monks decide what were the best sites? They looked at the hillside in the spring, and they saw where the snow melted first. Well, that's the best site. Has the best sun, it's the warmest, it's perfect. For example, in the Nahe, by Schönleber, for example, the Frühlingsplätzchen. This is exactly why it's named this. This was the spring place. This was the perfect place to plant vines. When we didn't have any science, that was the best way, right? Same thing with Charlemagne in Burgundy. When he would be getting a little on the sauce and, you know, the red Corton was spilling down his big white beard, his wife is like, hey, before someone decides to off you and take your throne because you're a little slipping, why don't you switch to white wine? It's not very noticeable. He was like, yeah, good idea, Hildy. So he decided to do the same thing. He said, men, go find me the best vineyard, tear out the red, and plant white. And that was supposedly the origin of Corton Charlemagne. So this is also not a new concept. So it stands to reason that they should say, okay, if the wine is ripe enough, that means it should be good. Fundamentally, not a bad idea. But then what happens? Awesome. We can make horribly sweet industrial plonk and then sell it off as grosses Gewächs, just because it's sweet enough. And then we can let those grapes hang on the vines and rot to hell and let the vine produce way too much. And of course, it's watery as all get out, maybe only 7% alcohol, but it's sweet enough. Good. Fast forward many, 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 many years. My mom was very excited that I was, actually not so excited that I was becoming a sommelier. She thought that was just a clever cover-up for becoming an alcoholic. Now I know she's right. But I went home, and she said, I got a wine fridge. I got a wine fridge. I said, okay, cool. I open it up. I pull out the drawer. What's the first bottle I saw? Anyone know? Blue Nun? I thought this was a joke. This is something I read about in my sommelier books that's like a joke amongst somms, like, it doesn't really exist. Like, I don't know, a Dirty Sanchez or something. And I was like, oh my God, Blue Nun. You gotta be kidding me. And so, it always hurts more when it, you know, strikes close to home. And that's what really sort of first got me thinking what happened back then. And to taste this wine now, what was just in the glass, the Von Winning, every single wine, pretty much, in his cellar in 13 is fermented to 0 grams residual sugar. Null. Nichts. So in a matter of years, I think we've come a hell of a long way, to be honest with you. And to finally believe, okay, we don't need the sugar. It can be nice. And at the end of the day, which we finally also learned with the whole VDP system, is that we shouldn't place value on sugar or acidity or alcohol. We place value on site. And these sites are great for a reason. And if they're not great, then we reevaluate it. But the point is, who cares how much sugar is in the glass if the acidity can also balance it out? And of course, all these wines today have a pretty wide range of residual sugar. Whether or not you perceive it is a whole different issue. Acidity, of course, it's all about harmony at the end of the day. Okay, now we're moving on to the fourth wine, yeah? They already have that? So we're moving on now to the Nahe. I guess we're focusing on Riesling today, but I should also note before we go to the Nahe that the Pfalz is an incredibly interesting region. And because of its multitude of microclimates and soil types, you find now incredible Chardonnay, incredible Sauvignon Blanc, Grauburgunder, Weißburgunder, Riesling, Spätburgunder, like really incredible examples in every varietal. So this, for me, really makes the Pfalz stand out. And I know Franken does a lot of things as well. I don't have any Franken wine here today, even though I'm coming from Bavaria, sorry. But the point is, I think that the Pfalz is really exciting, which is arising from being known as the Süßliche Weinstraße to now the Südliche, of course, properly named, and making something beautiful. Here we're at Gut Hermannsberg. Hermannsberg. Should I click? Should I click? So this was a Staatsweingut at one point in its life. Of course, Those guys were good at a few things, and being a Trüffelschweine was certainly one of them. And so they really managed to pick out some of the best domains in the area and declare them property of the state. The problem is, over time and change, thank God, change, some of them fell into disrepair. Hermannsberg was one of them. Had a bit of a dim time in the 80s and even into the early 90s. Then was purchased by private interest. And now Carsten Peter is the winemaker there, young guy, again, very motivated, like Stefan Attmann from von Winning, who I should also add, I forgot by the way, is a Burgundy freak. And if you go through his vineyard, or his cellar, sorry, he'll describe each Riesling as he would, oh yeah, the Pechstein is my Merceau Geneviève, and my Ungeheuer is a little bit lighter. That's like my Puligny Les Folatiers, and this is this. And I thought, what are you doing in Germany, man? But it makes sense for a guy who knows how to put things in barrel. He's the right one, even if it is Riesling. And Carsten Peter is also a very young, very motivated winemaker, incredibly precise. And his wines are like a knife in your mouth. I mean that in the best way. Hopefully there's a few masochists out there. These wines are the epitome of crystalline, clear, precise, sharp, direct. There is absolutely no messing around with these wines. And when you think, by the way, let's speak just a little bit about price. When you speak about, because I've spoken about Burgundy already, I've worked to harvest there, so of course I love Burgundy. It's really the way that I measure almost everything. If you think about price, just taste this wine and tell me what you think it costs. These are all, keep in mind, top wines. There's no slouch in the lot, yeah? So you won't find these, unfortunately, at Aldi. I can promise you that. But, give me a guess. Anybody? 40. Let me 40. Give me 41, 41, 41, 41, 41, 41. Anyone else? 15. Tastes like 40 is 15. You're both right. How about that? Such a diplomat. But it's true. When you think about the work that goes into these wines, this is absolutely insane. You stand here at Gut Hermannsberg, which in this beautiful little sort of coliseum, just perched above Oberhausen, where another well-known winemaker, of course, Dönhoff is. So with a nice little view right down there. And you look at this vineyard and you're like this, because it's like this. It's about a 72% grade. It's impossible to work with machines or horses or mules or anything. You basically have to wedge your feet in between the vines and basically mountain climb. And you have a basket, and you just kind of pick them like this, and you drop them in. And then you have to eventually, at the top, wonder why the graveyard is right at the bottom of the hill there, if you make it back. And basically, to do any work here, you have a tractor at the top, which has another tractor that is by a chain, basically rappelling down this whole thing to basically, you know, plow and prune and do all these things. This is an absolutely insane amount of work. Not only is it dangerous, but you can only pay the best pickers to work these types of vineyards. This is like the cigars. We have a complicated cigar, it's the best roller. You can't have a rookie, you know, do like a double figurado. It's the same thing with wine. So all these costs, let's think about this for a second. A bottle costs 20 cents. A good one, maybe 30. A cork, a crap one, 30 cents. A great one, €1, maybe €1.25. Labeling, because we're German and we have to have everything ordentlich. Every time you make a bottling, it has to have a separate AP number submitted to the board separately, approved separately with a new label. So you calculate all these costs then as well. On top of the labor, on top of the fact that you're in Germany with a marginal climate, which in the last couple of summers, crap, at least down where we are. I guess maybe Berlin was a little better. But and you're losing 20, 30, 40, 50% of your crop with relative regularity. So all these calculated in, to make a wine that's 15 bucks, that's like this, you can't touch that anywhere in the world. I'm not going to break out in any MC Hammer, sorry. But really, that's crazy. In Burgundy, with this level, you start with 25, 28, 35. And they have half the work that we do in Germany. No vineyards like this, no peril, no danger. I mean, often with tractors even. This is a whole different ballgame. So I think, relatively speaking, it's certainly worth it to point out, hey, listen, maybe we can complain that, 15 bucks is a lot of money. No, not for this quality of wine. Of course, you can also buy a $2 bottle of German wine, and that's fine. Throw some ice cubes in it, little soda, little dash of mint and lemon, you're good, yeah? But if you want something real, this is it. Now, we're moving over to Schloss Johannisberg. I wanted to throw in a mix of new and old, tradition and innovation. To not forget the past, but to show you the contrast of where we were, where we're going, and where we can go. Interestingly enough, we're pouring you another bone-dry example of German Riesling, which perceivably is bone-dry, but there's a few grams of residual sugar in there anyway. But with the acidity balance of 2013, you don't feel it, and that's kind of the idea. This is actually the birthplace of Spätlese. So basically, back in the 1700s, the Bürgermeister sent the messenger boy, he was on vacation, sent the messenger boy back to the Schloss in Johannesburg to give the okay to start picking. I don't know if the messenger boy tripped and fell in a local Mädchen, or if he dipped into the sauce himself a little too much, but he arrived a couple of weeks too late. And they picked when they were supposed to pick, and they thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? These grapes are rotten. And then they said, ooh, that's not bad. And so then this was so valued by, of course, the king himself and the Bürgermeister and everybody, they decided to make a habit out of it. So this is actually where, if you can imagine, the Spätlese was created. But this is the Silberlack. This is their Großes Gewächs. That Johannesburg doesn't really have to write any vineyard name because it is its own vineyard. The castle sits on the top, and around are all the vineyards. A lot of them very steep, about 60% slope. Also some on the flat, which is perfect for ice wine because all of the sort of fog settles down there, the dampness, the humidity, and then of course at the first frost, they can pick those grapes when they're frozen, and the ice or the water separates from the juice as a little ice cube inside of the grape, and they can gently press it and just get that one little golden drop of grape concentrate, and that's ice wine, which at one time until '82 you could make from any wine, any old wine, but now it has to be of the Beerenauslese quality, so really ripe. So only perfect conditions, which means you see ice wine a lot less often these days, and when you do, it's of a very, very high quality, which also explains the price, unfortunately. But this is, for me, the idyllic wine of Schloss Johannisberg. This is the Rheingau. We're now, of course, inching our way up towards Frankfurt am Main, and now we've got a whole different soil type that's very deep, very rich, lots of red, a little bit of slate, some clay, and it's like this. It's got broad shoulders. It's not as knife-like as the Nahe. It's not as, I guess, almost Burgundian flamboyant as the Pfalz. It's just something that's big. It's got a lot of power. And if you notice as well, for me, today in this tasting, this is with a pretty wide margin, the one that's the most closed. When you taste a young Riesling like this, you say, wow, it's not really doing too much for me. Well, this is the thing. With young wine, you really have to focus on the structure. This isn't about the flamboyance or the opulence or the decadence. This is about saying, okay, acidity, power, weight, presence, finish. How long is that still in my mouth? These are the things that a great Riesling makes. And at this stage in the life, you have to say, wow, that's going to really bring the noise at some point in its life. Give it a little time, I promise. But right now, you can feel there's this just brooding power. It's a giant is sleeping. But when it wakes up, okay. And now, we're heading over to, I guess, shortly, our final wine. This is a huge contrast to the others because we're jumping over from Frankfurt to the Mosel. The Mosel is, of course, I guess love it and hate it, right? This is one of those things, it's probably the most abused red-headed stepchild of all the stepchildren because it was always the one that every other country wanted to steal the name from. Whether it be like with Chianti in the US in big jugs, or it's Chablis somewhere else, or it's of course Moselle in Australia in a bag in a box with some guy in lederhosen. And it's like, well, that's Bavarian. We're not in Bavaria, but okay. What do the Aussies know? Hofbräu. So it's a horribly abused region that we have a terrible perception of, that are only sickly sweet and at the same terribly light with no body and no power and just sugar. And I guess sommeliers are always frustrated by this because this is one of simply the most majestic regions of the entire world. There is no region with so many incredibly sloped, just unbelievably beautiful vineyards. You will never see this anywhere. And the wines that it produces, when they're harnessed as something serious and not this industrial plonk, this is the Muhammad Ali. This is the float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. This is a wine like no other. That can have so much presence and so much power and can coat a palate at 11% alcohol and not at 15, or at 10 and not at 16. This is not an Australian Shiraz that needs to be 17 to give you an impression and 102 Parker points, right? They're not interested in that. This is the most fine, elegant, clear expression of Riesling you could possibly imagine. And depending on where it comes from, because you have three major regions of the Mosel, of course. You have, of course, so the Mosel, the Saar, and the Ruwer. Okay, so the Saar is basically right up against Trier. So there you have two big names, Van Volksem and, of course, Igor Müller. Then you go into the Ruwer, and that's where we are now. The Ruwer is probably the least, I guess, celebrated of all three. But I think, my opinion, in the Ruwer is one of the most important wineries in the entire Mosel. And speaking about tradition and innovation, look at the label. This is completely old school, and it hasn't changed ever. This is how the bottle looked. This is how it is. This is how it will be. The Karl von Schubert, I was actually there with him. I had no idea. He's such a quiet, elegant man, and his wines are exactly the same. But when he speaks, it's like, ooh, everyone shut up. He barks softly but carries a big stick, as we say. And it was actually his birthday. I'm like, why in the hell are you, he didn't even tell me till the end. I'm like, why are you tasting with some punk American kid on your birthday? Shouldn't you have something better to do? No, he's just that kind of guy. He's so cool, he's been doing this for so long, it's his passion. And at 74 years old, he's now started to experiment. And now he's paying attention to also what other guys are doing, like von Winning, like Van Volksem, the guys who are doing things also in barrique. And he realizes that there's another way, not just the tradition. And so now he started to make a wine. I apologize to tell you, this isn't it, but just to let you know. Looks exactly the same, but it's got a red seal here, and it's called Fusion. He makes 800 bottles of it a year. And what he decided to do was, okay, if we're going to use barrels, why are we buying French barrels? Anyway, in French barrel making, 30% of the wood comes from Germany, yeah? Sorry, but to burst the bubble, but the Allier and Limoges forests and the Tronchet, this is romantic to talk about, but they're not that big to produce 5 billion barrels a year somehow, right? Not happening. So anyway, a whole hell of a lot of German wood makes its way over the border every year and then comes back to us when we buy it back. It's very smart. It's very French. So the point is, he said, well, I've got this forest on top of my vineyard. Why don't I use that? And so he's got about 13 hectares. He's got about 5 hectares of forest over the Abtsberg, which is his top vineyard, and the Herrenberg and the Bruderberg. He separates it sort of as the monks did before, like Châteauneuf-du-Pape, the wine for the popes, the wine for the cardinals, and the wine for the bishops. He started to make barrels with his own wood, toast the crap out of them, so like he was going to put bourbon in them, actually, and then leave the Riesling in there for 3 years on the lees. And when I tasted this wine, I almost freaked out. And he couldn't believe it. He said, oh, you like this? I was like this? This is one of the best Rieslings I've ever had in my life. He said, oh, okay. I said, yeah, can I have like 60 bottles? He's like, normally people can buy one when they come. I said, yeah, cool. I'll take 61. And thankfully, we have a little bit now. But the point is, you're never too old to reinvent yourself as well. And I think that's also important for where our German wine culture is going. And it speaks volumes, of course, for how much potential we have that's not even unlocked yet. This is, for me anyway, one of the most absolute picture book wines of all of Germany, which is the Superior. He takes the best barrels, the best parcels from the Abtsberg lager and makes it separately as a cuvée and says, this is it. And, you know, there's 2 ways that I always gauge, regardless of points and reviews, even what I think. If I go to a place and I want to know what the best wine is, there's 2 things. 1, what's the first bottle that's empty? And number 2, what do all the winemakers drink when they're not drinking their wines? If you ask almost anyone in the Mosel, they're drinking this. So, how are we doing on time? Oh yeah, we're good. So I think it's only appropriate from, I guess, an Auslander's point of view, who's also looking at somehow trying to carry over 43 years of culinary history and 3 of our country's most titanic chefs in Witzigmann, Winkler, and of course now Chef Haas. And of course, coming after Paula Bosch, to try to somehow carry this with me and of course evolve it further. This is a running theme, not just in my own life, but of course now reflected in the wine that I'm most passionate about. And I think that we should, as a culture here, really embrace the idea that what we have right in our backyard truly is not only world class, but really of a level that few can actually seek to compete. This is my view of Riesling. I hope it was informative. I hope even more so that it was delicious. And I would ask you just to please return your glasses to the, what do you call it? The depository. There's no fund, but it's the honor system here. If there happens to be any questions, maybe give us a quick minute or 2. I'd be happy to entertain 1 or 2. Oh, by the way, I did not mention it. I should now. The prices of the wines, very quickly. Just to give you a sort of rough estimate. Oh, you know what? Shoot, I didn't talk about Joachim Dreisegacker. Sorry, I almost forgot. Joachim. There was also wine from the Rheinhessen in there. Boy, I didn't sleep much last night. Sorry. Sorry. Before we finish up here. The Rheinhessen. Geez, how could I forget? This is also, for me, one of the most impressive regions of Germany with the Nahe, because before there was nothing in the Rheinhessen. It's also currently responsible, the Rheinhessen, for 25% of Germany's wine production in total. So that means there's a lot of rubbish in the Rheinhessen as well. So it's always good to not take, of course, maybe one of the best wines as typical of every wine from the Rheinhessen. But what I find incredibly intriguing is that now, from 0 to hero, essentially, is for me the Rheinhessen one of the absolute most exciting up-and-coming regions, with some of the most formidable names in German wine today, which would include, of course, Klaus-Peter Keller, Joachim Dreisig-Acker, Wittmann, etc., 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 with vineyards like Moorstein, like Abtserde, like Kirchenspiel. This is the Moorstein. This is actually, thinking about price, just had me thinking about this. This is the most expensive wine of the day. This is the most luscious, this is the most sort of decadent and broad and big, and this luscious honeysuckle and everything from these, surprisingly enough, not by a long shot the steepest slopes today. Not that we should always speak about steep slopes as being inherently good. But when, of course, the vines are forced to plunge their roots deep down to find nourishment, then it means the vines on top are struggling. The more they struggle, the less they produce. The less they produce, the more concentrated per bunch. And that's kind of what we're striving for. Not to mention, they're plunging down at some points. We've actually found in the Mosel 25 meters deep. 25 meters. Craziness. And of course, when you're going 25 meters through a strata like the Mosel, you're probably traversing, oh, I don't know, a couple million years of the Earth's history through. And so you're soaking up a little bit of anything from the Big Bang to dinosaurs to prehistoric man to today. I think that's pretty freaking cool too, when you can literally drink history, connect with the bedrock of where we come from protozoa to people. And this is surprisingly not from one of those vineyards. Although it's a great terroir, it's relatively rolling, easygoing, very hilly, but not sharply steep. $40. This is the $40 one. The rest of them clock in at about 20, 25. Retail. So again, I think value for the money. Try to beat Germany. Pretty impossible. These wines are young. They all need about 5 to maybe 15 years in my books. I love drinking the 08 Silberlachs right now. They're delicious. The 07s are singing. For example, Grünhäuser, geez, drink the 60s now. Silberlach, Grünlach, the Spätlese, I have back to 64 on the wine list right now, and it's crushing it. Beautiful wine, for example. Anyway, the point is, drink them as you like them, young or old. Give them a little bit of time. The 13s are going to be fantastic, but a little patience. Okay, good. I didn't insult Joachim Dreisig-Acker. That's also nice. Sorry, question. That's a very good question. The question was, if these are such amazing wines, which they are, why is it such a big secret? And how is Germany going to reconcile itself with the world market in the coming years? And this is a huge problem, because unfortunately, as I was alluding to with the Blue Nun thing, the marketing was exactly the opposite of everything else. Countries who notoriously make oceans of rubbish and a few great wines have marketed themselves as a great wine-growing region from these few wines by successfully sweeping the rest under the rug. Germany did the opposite. Germany said, let's keep all the good stuff here and ship all the crap away, which theoretically is a good idea. But when it comes to marketing, this is a catastrophe, because now you've basically just funneled all of your pollution into the world, and everyone thinks, well, what the hell can Germany do? We're like, no, it's great, you can't have it. This is a problem. And now what the bigger problem is that people are turning to Riesling from places like New Zealand, even America, even Australia, and of course Austria. Austria killed it with the marketing, man. I mean, when I first started selling Austrian wines, they were dirt cheap. I was drinking Pichler for, I don't know, 15 bucks American. And then all of a sudden, overnight, 45. Bang! Everyone's like, wow, this is amazing, because it's expensive now. And Germany did not play that card. They said, no, we're cool. You know, we're making good wine. We know it. How about those sales? Nope, not happening. And now people's ideas of Riesling are being developed by the wrong examples. Not to say that they're the wrong examples, but they're not the original examples. To compare a Clare Valley Riesling that smells like a new can of tennis balls is not the same as the petrol of a Mosel Riesling or the limestone of a Pfalz Riesling. It's not the same. And so it's dangerous. If honestly we don't get off our asses real quick, we're going to lose our own market. And people are going to drink other Rieslings that are good and then taste one of our great classics and say, what the hell is this? Yeah, it's the original, but no one knows. Anyway, Billy, people like us are ardently trying to fix this. And I think at least standing here as a non-German, at least there's some evidence. There's some hope. Even if I can espouse to be the Skywalker of German Riesling, I'll take it. Cool, well, thank you very much for your time.